I want to start off with kind of a harder analysis, less of a vibe check, more of what you guys would expect from me on such a monumental day with this trade happening. Today marks the Josh Harris restart of the franchise. And according to The Athletic's Diana Rossini, ownership was involved in at least some form or fashion here. I'm sure as the reporting is flushed out, we'll hear a little bit more of just how involved, but there was certainly encouragement to make trades that were better for the long term of this team. And, you know, I don't want to use the words fortunately or unfortunately because that depends on your perspective, but realistically, they thought that this was, the football people, the ownership to the extent that they're involved in this, thought that these deals would help move that along. I think they are correct. And that is not because Chase Young and Montez Sweat are not excellent individual football players. It's not because this team hasn't had success with both of them on the field. They did, kind of figure it out late in 2020 defensively and obviously rode that and a horrendous rest of the NFC and specifically NFC East to a playoff spot that 7-9 season under Rivera in his first year. But since then, they have not been very good with both of them on the field. And the reality of the situation is this. This team was supposed to be a defensive first, potentially certainly top 10, potentially top 5 unit. And they are currently 28th out of 32 teams in defensive DVOA. They are 31st in yards against, and they are 31st in scoring. So no matter how good you think Chase Young or Montez Sweat is, clearly this team is not good enough with them to justify continuing forward along this path. They are the two that pay the price as having contracts coming up as the easiest guys to deal. There's no dead cap money as you would take on in a Payne or Allen deal. And so if you're going to, and by the way, you're going to have to pay them. And so by the way, like if you're going to make a move, these are the guys that are going to get moved based off this current timeline. I'd also argue they're the two best guys to get moved because they're third and fourth best players on this line. I think the level Daron Payne has played at the last 2 years, he's been the best player on the team. Or on the defensive line. I think John Allen has been very good. I think Sweat has been very good. I think Chase Young has looked phenomenal in stretches, although he's also looked fairly pedestrian. And realistically, as let me hone in on Chase, and then I'll talk more about Montez. Chase Young is uber talented, but his effort level in games is at times extremely poor. And if you're trying to set a culture for the future, you have to evaluate that and decide, is it important to you to have the talent or to have the guys that go out there and bust their butts? And you see a difference in how this defense plays with Casey Tuhill, James Smith-Williams, and F.A. Obata in that spot when there's just effort there. And sure, on individual plays, when Chase's talent wins, what more could you possibly want? And I've been singing Chase's praises much of the last few weeks because he has played really well in spots. But you start to watch the tape a little closer. You start to watch what happens when he doesn't immediately win. You watch him in the run game, and it's not NFL quality. It's not NFL effort. And he's young. He may still learn to give that. He may now be in a situation in San Francisco where he feels more pressure to do that, because he'll have an example in Nick Bosa, who doesn't really care about Chase Young, his feelings, or anything else. He's just going to go out and play hard. And a coaching staff in San Francisco that doesn't tolerate the things that get tolerated here. And so this is not a full indictment of Chase. This is in part an indictment of the organization. There's also a geography situation here. How much of this is influenced by the fact that Chase is closer to home? And sometimes that's a good thing, and sometimes that's a bad thing. And I don't know that it's been a great thing for Chase here. You hear all these different things and rumblings and rumors, and you don't know what to believe. But the stuff that we know is there's been miscommunication between him and the staff, him and the organization over injuries, over when he's going to play, over when he's not, how certain things are progressing. It has been a tumultuous relationship. And at some point, it's better for all parties to move on. And what you see league-wide here is the league doesn't know what to make of it. There is no world talent-wise, for as great as Montez Sweat is, that he should be getting a higher return when they are both in contract years than Chase Young. But the league tells you your value. And I don't think the Commanders traded with the 49ers for funsies. They did it because that was the best offer on the table. Probably a lot of fourth rounders. The Niners were like, well, shoot, we have this extra compensatory third. Let's do that. And the Commanders looking around and just go, I guess that's the deal. And so it was. And so I understand the frustration today of not getting more for Chase, even if you like the idea of trading Chase, for not getting more for him. You'll blame Ron Rivera. It's organizational malpractice. How could let another GM do this? You can't. You don't have the long-term say over this. All you can do is deal with the right now. You could wait, but there's no guarantee that the pick is going to get any better. I mean, I guess I think the argument for keeping Chase would have been this, and I don't think this is unreasonable. You let him play out the final 9 games. You hope that it gets better. You franchise him, and then you trade him. But then what do you do with Cam Curl? Now your path forward is very simple. You have one guy you need to take care of in a big money way. That is Cam Curl. So if you don't get a deal done with him fairly early in the offseason, and when I say you, I mean the Commanders, and I mean probably someone who's not Ron Rivera and Martin Mayhew or Marty Hurney or any of the people that are in those jobs right now. Realistically, if we're being adults about this, there's going to be new people making the decisions. So those people now have the bargaining power to go to Cam Curl and say, this is the deal. If you like it, you can sign. We can also negotiate a little bit if you want a little more here, a little less here, a little whatever, whether that's years, bonus money, salary, however they want to structure it, they can have that conversation. And if not, you franchise him. And whether you then keep him or you trade Cam Curl as well is a decision that is to be made by the next people. What you don't have to worry about is who do we sign, who do we franchise, who do we risk letting get to the market, who do we just lose? And the thing is, for everyone that's like, oh, you're getting a compensatory pick anyway, not necessarily. This is a team with a ton of cap space. And if you lose, let's say Montez Sweat, he goes signs a big deal somewhere else, you get a compensatory third rounder if you don't sign another big-time free agent. So if you go out and you sign a big-time free agent, you don't get anything. So you get what you can now, and you move forward with the understanding that a rebuild is on to an extent. I think it can be a Philadelphia Eagles-style pretty fast rebuild, and I think the draft capital today is really important in that because you have now choices, and you have choices in a draft that is loaded, and it's loaded specifically with quarterbacks, which could be a relevant piece of information for you directly if this season goes sideways for the final 9 games of Sam Howell, and if you decide that is not the direction you want to go, okay. Or if you decide that there's, Sam was good, but maybe we trade him, kind of like the Cardinals did with what's his face, Josh Rosen a couple years ago, because he was good, or he was good enough as a rookie to show a little bit of promise, although he wasn't very good. Sam's been better than Josh Rosen was, but they got a second or third for him a year later. Which in Sam's case, from a 5th, if you can get a 3rd in return, sweet. But then can you use that to trade up and get the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th pick? But even if you don't and you're sweet, we actually have a guy in Howell, we don't need to spend money at quarterback or a high draft pick. If there's 4 quarterbacks that are awesome in this draft, what does that do to the rest of the draft? It pushes everybody down. So let's say there's a Hall of Fame left tackle available that normally would go 2nd. That guy might go 6th. And if you're the Commanders and you're going to wind up picking 15th, and you can all of a sudden trade the 15th pick, the 35th pick that you just got from the Bears for Montez, and your own 2nd up for the building block left tackle for the next decade, is that better? And that, by the way, that guy now costs you rookie salary for the next 5 years. Or maybe it's even an edge rusher. Maybe there's a literal direct replacement that costs you a fraction of what Montez Sweat will cost you, and maybe is 90% of the player as a rookie, because he's literally the best pass rusher in the draft, and his upside is 120% of Montez Sweat. That's on the table for you now. It was not when I woke up this morning. And so I understand that people are thinking directly oh, this trade got this for that guy. Eyes on your own paper. The Commanders' future got better today. And if your biggest gripe is that the Commanders have stunk at second-round picks, one, I hear you. Two, that's a silly gripe. Because I just texted with a buddy of mine who's a big Commanders fan. There is no strategy that is management-proof. Just like there is no play that is execution-proof. There is no team-building strategy that is management-proof. If they don't hire the right coach and they don't hire the right GM, none of this matters, but it would have never mattered. Keeping Chase and Montez would not have mattered. What you've done now, if you're Josh Harris, and to whatever extent he put his thumb on the scales, is set your next regime up with a lot of capital to make big, bold moves, or stay put and get a lot of good young players that should fit the culture of whatever the next coach wants to be.
This is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.